You got to keep him. And I like that you have him under one more year of team control. And maybe at the end of that season, maybe that's where you start thinking about, okay, well, is there a post-Mitch Haniger world? But right now, when he's this consistent and your team has the second worst batting average in baseball and the third worst OPS in baseball, you need to keep the one guy who has really been providing the majority of your power. He's tied for second in baseball in home runs with 8. He's able to do this. He must be here. Must. I don't think that the idea of trading a player who has proven he can hit at the major league level for the potential for guys who can hit at the major league level, continuing to do that, I don't think that's smart.
That means that you think the Mariners are good, though. That means if you feel that way, if you feel that you can't trade Mitch Haniger, that means you feel the Mariners are good and should contend and be in the conversation for a playoff spot next year, and will do that next year.
I just think it's more that I think we oversimplify the idea that you can find these young players when you trade for prospects. I don't necessarily believe that every single prospect that looks good on a list from Baseball America is actually going to pan out at the major league level. And I would just point at Evan White right now as a guy who is still trying to figure out how to hit at this level.
But Mitch, long-term, probably isn't here. Like, the odds of him still being here in 2023 it's less than 50%. I mean, that's just the reality, because he's going to get more expensive. The players that you have coming up and the way this outfield looks. So the question isn't, hey, is Mitch good, or are prospects a sure thing, which they're not. The question is, if this team isn't going to be good, if you don't think this team will make the playoffs this year or next year, Mitch is just kind of making you okay or improving your draft position in these 2 years. If you're not good enough to make the playoffs this year or next year, you should move him, regardless of how good you feel he is as a player.
2 years from now, then, I guess is the question. Because next year, that might be a bit of a stretch. 2 years from now, though, I think that's when everything is supposed to come together, right? I would assume.
But Mitch probably isn't here 2 years from now. I mean, just wait. Unless you re-sign him. He gets expensive. He gets expensive in 2023.
How expensive would he be as an age? I think he would be, what, 32?
32.
At that point in time, guy who has had the injury history that he has had.
That's part of the question. You've also got some young sluggers that you're hoping are going to be up here by then. Kyle Lewis, Jared Kelenic, Julio Rodriguez, Taylor Trammell. Like, those are 4 guys who all play outfield that you have some high hopes for, and maybe they won't pan out and become as good as. That's what I'm saying. If you are adamant about keeping Mitch Haniger, you should think that the Mariners are good enough to make the playoffs this year or next year.
I understand that line of thinking. There's also a part of me, though, that thinks, you know what? You aren't paying anyone anything. So what's the harm in having maybe a guy who you know can hit for a couple of years down the road? You know, I don't have a problem paying somebody that I know can do something just because the team isn't contending right now. I would like to have at the very least a couple of guys who I know for sure. You have too much what if right now with this team, and that's great, and it allows for a lot of optimism and hope and all that stuff, but a lot of times it doesn't work out.
You know what, Paul? I am persuaded by that approach, which is that the idea that I'm kind of advocating for, or saying that, hey, if you're not good, you might as well be as bad as possible. If you're not good, you should either have players that you think are going to be with you when you get good, or you should be bad to accumulate. It means that you bathe yourself in loser juice, right?
Yes.
If you take that approach, like, you bathe yourself in loser
You're like
juice.
The
If you would say,
Sixers for a long period of time.
yeah, or like the Oklahoma City Thunder are right now, and that comes at a cost too. Not having competent pros and not having someone that shows you what it's like to approach the game day in and day out, to rip out guys who are good examples for your younger players as they mature, that has a cost too. And you know what? As fans, it's nice to have competent players to root for.
Yes.
And to go and see and to watch.
Our guy Luke Arkins tweeted basically along those lines last night. This team needs and will need productive veterans to provide stability to the lineup as the kids develop. And right now, who do you have other than Mitch Haniger on your roster, sadly? No one.